Hey everybody, welcome to the next episode of the Strand Tennis Center podcast, filled with tips, advice, tennis, not tennis, just life advice too, whatever you need. Like it on YouTube, share it on the podcast as well. Thank you. All right, everybody, welcome to the Strand Tennis Center podcast. I am solo today. I wanted to go over strings, George. What string to use? What type of string? How do these strings start? All these things. Everybody asks about string because we do a lot of racket stringing here, and I'd like to kind of have a whole tutorial for people. I'm even going to send this to our contact list as well so they know. But they'll listen to the show, all 7 of them. I'm just kidding, George. So, strings. How did this all get started? Well, let's go through the strings first. So, I'm going to read through a couple of things. I don't want it to be so boring, but I got to read through a few things because I think it's key. You know, strings are so important to the player's game. I'd say sneakers, racket, strings. I mean, it's pretty close. Like, you get a player to want to change their sneakers, and it's a whole process. It's like a new marriage. It's like getting a divorce. Those things are very important. Strings are very important too, and the tension of the string is very important. So there's a couple of things here. It's the type of string, it's the tension of the string, it's the gauge of the string. So those are very important. So the tension, obviously the tension is how tight it's pulled. The gauge of the string is how thick the string is. Thinner string gives you a little bit more feel, may break more, thicker. We'll go through that whole thing, but those things are big for a player, and for every level of player, the strings are important. A totally beginner, maybe it doesn't matter as much, but as you go up to next levels, strings are very important. You can spend weeks and months trying different strings. We've had clients, oh my God, I've had clients try, string it with this on the crosses and the mains, string this one, different crosses and mains means. And I'll have a racket is the cross strings and the main strings like this, like the long ways and the cross ways. So they string it at different pounds, 1, 2, 3 pounds, 4 pounds difference. You can mess around with so many different things, and you can be careful. You can, I just looking at my notes here so I make sure that the strings in your racket make up 50% of the playability of the racket. That's what I was writing down. The factors of wrong string are very important. So let's go through the factors of the wrong string, which I said, the gauge. So the gauge, you can get 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 gauge. It's opposite. The higher the number, the thinner the string. The lower the number, the thicker the string. So in general, if you get a string that is 19 or 18 gauge, that'll break. It rarely happens. You don't really get that kind of string. You usually do a 16 or a 17 gauge. You would do a 17 gauge for a softer string, which is more of a synthetic or multi-filament. You would do a 16 gauge more for a poly. That's usually what people do. Sometimes they switch, but in general, no. But let me go through the gauge. So the gauge, which I just did, thinner, stress. So I'll go through the typical things, what I just said. Furthermore, a thinner string is less durable in comparison to the thicker string, which we said. That being due to there being less material wear through and then added friction by the added movement. Okay. It's the actual diameter of the string to better understand the impact it has. That's how the thick of it. So tension again, which we talked about. A looser string, a string that's strung at a looser tension, say like Jack Sock used to string it at, oh my God, I can't even remember, like 35 pounds, really loose. Because players usually with a bigger swing, or this is so many different ways to look at this. When you have a lot of power, you don't need it from the strings, or some people string it tighter, like Sinner, because he doesn't need it, who plays number 1 in the world, doesn't need that much power. Some people like the trampoline effect. When you string it looser, it trampolines out. McEnroe was stringing it really loose because he didn't have a big swing. He would kind of redirect the ball, so you would string it looser. You string it tighter for more control because you're swinging bigger and you want more control. Usually a smaller swing has looser strings because the ball explodes off the racket easier. It's more of a trampoline effect. Usually when I serve and volleyed, you'd come in and you just want to redirect the ball. It would have looser strings, so it would come in like a trampoline and release. I wouldn't want a stiffer racket because a stiffer racket doesn't give you as much feel. When you're a bigger hitter, you want a stiffer racket because you want to control the ball more. So those are the kind of more important, the things to worry about. Tension, thickness of string, right? Those are big. Or the gauge is what it's called. Now the string types, there's a few. There's gut, there's multi-filament, there's synthetic, there's polyester. There's 4 different types of string. So I'm going to tell you a little history story though, George, in the meantime. So, because I wanted to read about this and I didn't know it too well. In 1874, Major Wingfield started this tennis game, but he needed strings, right? He started like making it popular, lawn tennis. So he hooked up with Babolet and Monnier. It's a musical instrument business that specialized in making strings for instruments. So they made the modern day natural gut string. In 1875, a year after the invention of the modern game, Pierre Babolat produced a string made from sheep's gut. It used to be natural gut from the sheep. It didn't take, so then after they were making this natural gut, then finally they came up with this VS gut. Babolat, and it's not an advertisement for Babolat, they don't give us any money. They still sell VS gut. In 1925, he launched the new VS gut. And then players like Lacoste, all these players started to use it, became very popular because synthetic gut, I mean, and again, I'm looking at this, Babolat, it's one of the biggest brands still in the world, obviously, Babolat. Not just, they actually were a stringing company first before they started, being popular with the rackets, before Nadal started using them. So how is this gut made? How do you make natural gut? I was interested about it too. So cow's gut is salted, so you salt the gut. They make it from cow's gut now. Before it's stored inside cold containers to maintain its natural properties before it's used to make strings. Once the gut is ready to be used, the gut is washed in water to remove the salt. The gut is then quality checked for any fatty acids. Next, gut strands are separated from the hand, and the longest fibers are kept for strength and elasticity. The gut is then checked using ultraviolet technology to ensure the strands are unchanged. This is interesting. I didn't know any of this stuff. Once this has been done, the strands are laid out on the table to measure and ensure they are long enough. So it goes through the whole process here. So this is the first thing. Natural gut started it. But why use natural gut? Well, I'll tell you right off the bat, you used to use it because it's got incredible feel. It's incredibly soft. You can do so many things with it. And this is the main reason why. Ball hits the string bed of the racket. The soft elasticity of the guts create a trampoline-like effect, giving players unmatched amount of power, and the softness gives you feel. It gives you everything. The only problem with gut on a local level, it's hard to source. It's very expensive. People don't want to buy a pack of gut for $150 a pack. And then you break the strings because they're so soft and natural, they're going to break. And gut used to not be able to go outside with the gut. If it rained, it's not good for the string because it's an actual natural gut. So gut is an incredible feel. But people also have social issues about using animal products on their racket, right? So they do. So that's part of it too. But super expensive. It's going to cost you a lot of money to keep refilling your racket with gut. So where do we go after that? We go to multi-filament. So multi-filament is strings, they replicate natural gut, but they're synthetic, right? But it's not a synthetic gut, but I'm saying it's manufactured. They're made from thousands of tiny fibers woven together. Instead of using cow intestines, they use a high-grade nylon instead. So it's a nylon type of product. The string has improved greatly over the years, but it still doesn't compete with natural gut, but it's a soft feel. It will break. It's the closest thing you can get, and the price is right. The price is a good product. So if you feel like you want the feel of natural gut, but you can't afford it, use it. It'll last a decent amount, probably last longer than gut. You want to use it if you have some arm injuries too, because it's a little softer. So that's your other thing. Then You can go for a regular synthetic. A synthetic, they're constructed with a monofilament core and a multifilament wrap around it. So it's got a monofilament and the multifilament wrapped around it. They, like multifilaments, are made of nylon, but usually of a lower grade quality. So it's just a lower grade quality. It's a cheaper string. It'll probably break sooner, but it's not going to cost you that much. You're only not going to use this if you're a high performance super pro, because you're going to break them all the time. It's going to be a waste. They break them anyways, but the string's not as quality either. It's not going to be able to hold on to the ball. Usually with a great string, holds onto the ball longer, has more feel. A synthetic, you know, it's more for like a junior player or beginner or adult that's just learning how to play, because they're not going to break the string and it's going to last a long time. And it'll still give them the feel they want. So the other thing we can do is a polyester. So these are very popular, a polyester string. They're a high performance string. They're very similar to, in other words, a natural gut you can play with. These strings have garnered lots of attention over the years. Like we said, most professional players use them. A full bed of polyester strings or a hybrid, which we'll talk about as well. A full bed means that your whole racket has got all of those strings in it, a full bed. So these strings, some of the old polyesters are really hard on your arm, and you couldn't use them as the whole bed. You have to string them really loose, so it's hard on your arm. But now, no advertisement is Solinco has got a nice soft string. It's called a Hyper G that you can use as a full bed of poly. Now, that lasts longer. The only thing with poly is you only get about 10 hours of play in it because it'll loosen up. So like we go back to the tension. If you string it at 52, it's going to loosen usually in about 10 hours of play. So you're going to have to restring without it breaking. It won't break. It'll just lose the tension. I'll read a little bit more here. How they're constructed, so you know. They're constructed of a single strand of polyester, offering the greatest level of durability and control due to stiffness. However, due to the stiffness of the string, like I said, it does reduce any vibration from the impact and can lead to arm issues, like we said. That's why many players use poly and request. This is why many players who use poly request their rackets be restrung, even if they didn't use it. A number of rackets, because it can be hard on your arm, like we said. You got 6 or 10 hours of play. Devises a string polyester. 10% lower tension than others. A polyester string will be stringed a lot lower in tension because it's very hard on your arm. Now, you can string a fifth way. You can do a hybrid. Hybrid is not a different string. It's how you string it. So you can string half poly, half synthetic, half poly, half natural gut, half poly, half multifilament, because could be a couple of reasons why, and I'll read some of the details that they have here. It could be because you want the string to last longer. You don't want the arm. You don't want it to be so hard on your arm with just all poly. You want to have that feel and that durability at the same time. So hybrid string is when a player uses 2 different strings, one in the mains, one in the crosses. Traditionally, a polyester was used in the mains and a softer string in the crosses, like we just said. The goal is to provide a greater level of durability without having to deal with a full bed of poly. Recently, there's been a trend to reverse the hybrid by putting the softer string in the mains and the polyester in the crosses. The goal is to provide more comfort and feel compared to the traditional hybrid. So instead of the mains being poly, because that's covering most of the racket, the crosses will now poly because that's even more feel. But you would assume the racket's going to break quicker. So there's pros and cons to all of this. I would say try them all. We have 3 different demos with 3 different types of string. The same demo, though. So you have the same racket. That's the control. And we have 3 different strings. So you will be able to know and say, okay, this racket's exactly the same, but I like this string. I would try exactly that way. Even if you get it from Tennis Warehouse, try the same racket with 3 different strings. And you're going to have to experiment, and that's the best way to do it. So hopefully this gives you a little idea. Natural gut is probably my favorite, but it's too expensive. Multifilament is probably the best sweet spot. If you're not a high-performance player, multifilament is probably the best sweet spot, but you're still a decent player because it's going to last to give you feel. Synthetic gut's going to break too quick. You use that if you're a beginner or, you're still learning the game. You want to use a nice hybrid. If you're you got a solid player, you need feel, you need all this stuff, you're kind of like a 10 or 11 UTR. I mean, it's going to show a real change and a difference in how you have feel and play. So hopefully this gives enough information. Good luck with your stringing woes. It happens a lot. Strings break all the time. It sucks. They break at the wrong time. Sometimes you get a bad break too, where it breaks at the knot, and that's the worst. You feel like you didn't get your money's worth. Sometimes you'll frame it, George, and it breaks right at the knot, or it breaks right at the top. You don't even get a full string in. But hopefully this helps you, educate you on the string a little bit. Maybe it'll help you make some decisions that you're struggling with. And have a good day, everybody. Thanks. Hey, everybody. Hope you like the podcast. Please share it with your friends, anybody that you know, anybody that's into tennis, anybody that's into bettering themselves. Share it.